always fun to be here and see a lot of people that you know, like, purely from the internet. You know, that's the thing, like, I live in Alabama, but people ask, like, oh, where are you from? Alabama, but it's like, really, I'm just from the internet, essentially. That's how people know you. It's like Alabama doesn't actually have that much to do with what I actually, I mean, it has a lot to do with my law practice, but it doesn't have a lot to do with what I do, like, out here in the public sphere with people. So my talk is about LawyerSlack, which is something I started doing about a year ago, and it is a community of lawyers. It's a community like you would have anything else. It's almost sort of like a bar association for lawyers, except it just happens to be on the internet. It's a fun place. It's a pretty different place. It's a pretty salty place. And that's being generous. But before I talk about it, I kind of want to talk about communities in general and about how people are actually interacting with brands and services in general. And when you look around, you'll notice that people were very product-oriented initially. Like, people really knew a brand, and they had lots of really great affinity for a brand, and they attached to it really, really well. And products, and then services became amazing. Lawyers have always provided services, so it's a little bit different, but we've moved to a very service-based economy, right? We're here at the Clio Cloud Conference, right? It's a service that you subscribe to help run your practice. And then from that, things got very customer-centric, where, like, how are we going to do these things? Like, how can we, like, very specifically engage with an individual customer? And now, generally speaking, most people believe that we're in a relationship era. We're in an era where people really value having a relationship with products and services that they use. And so, but with that, brand loyalty is at an all-time low. They don't care about brand loyalty anymore. I mean, people used to go to McDonald's and they really enjoyed McDonald's, but it's not really the case anymore. And people are able to just go somewhere else. If they have a negative experience, the internet has been like such a great leveler that they'll go anywhere they feel like. They don't have to stay with somewhere just because they've been using it. The barrier to leaving a product or service is lower than it's ever been before. And people who are loyal are very quick to shift their allegiances. And in all this, it's more difficult than ever to get people's attention, right? Attention is a really interesting word that people don't, I think, pay enough attention to, actually, because, and I just said it there as well, generally you pay money for things. Attention's the only other thing you pay with, right? You're paying attention to me. Right? I have to be more engaging and more exciting than your phone and your laptop. And that is some bullshit. That's not going to happen. Right? Like, in your hand, you have the most compelling, personalized device that has ever existed on the planet. It knows everything about you. It knows everything you like. It delivers everything that you could ever possibly want, tailored to your interests, and somehow you're going to listen to me right now instead of that. Like, that's stupid. That's not going to happen unless I'm, like, really on my game. And that's where you see as lawyers where, like, how are you going to get people's attention? There's so much going on. Like, how is this going to work? You see people say, oh, we're in this world of content and marketing, and there's all this different stuff like, oh, you've got to have the best content. You've got to have the best marketing, and how are you going to do this and that, whatever. But what's actually happening is we're really just entering a world of noise. Right? We're deluged by ads. Like, the average person probably sees something like 4,000 ads a day. Like, constant advertising is all over you all the time. When you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, when you're on social media of any type, ads, people, stuff. Oh, well, I've got email coming in. Oh, I'm going to look at my email, and this is going to happen. Then, oh, and I've got the TV on in the background. And then, oh, I'm getting messages from people. And oh, and it's just too much, right? Oh, well, we'll do different things. We'll have different strategies for our practice because we need to, as lawyers, we've got to bust in there and we've got to have people. So we're going to, video's the new thing, right? Everybody knows Facebook's favoring video and everyone wants to do video now, and video's the great thing. 100 hours of video are uploaded every minute on YouTube. A minute, 100 hours per minute. Do you really think somehow you're going to break through that? I mean, maybe you can. Maybe you're super engaging. Maybe you've spent a lot of money on production. But that's really hard. You know, oh, we're on Facebook. We do really good with Facebook. Okay, there's 50 million active small business pages on Facebook. It's noise, right? Facebook is super hard to engage in anyway because of the way their algorithm works. You almost have to pay for engagement on Facebook at this point. It's not that you can't get some natural organic engagement, but realistically speaking, it's too hard. You can't get through. Same thing, Twitter. There's 500 million tweets going on all the time. People, and Twitter is like the biggest noise magnet everywhere. And plus you have to like get over whatever craziness the current president of the United States is saying at the same time, which is like, that's tough, right? How do you break through this? How can you move to that sort of relationship status that people are looking for? And that's where you see people now, like, you used to be video production companies, but now they're content creators. And there used to be copywriters, and there's content firms. And you used to have blogs, but they're actually content publishers. And you start to get in this cycle of when these things happen. And even something that, say, you trusted it initially, you're like, this is a thing I trust, I give them my attention. And then sponsored content starts showing up. And then you start to be like, okay, that's sponsored, I get it. And then you read the next story, and you're like, this reads a lot like the thing I just read that was sponsored. And you start to not trust it, right? And everyone's so accustomed to being delusional with this that people tune it out. They block it. They block ads. Who here uses an ad blocker on their, like, does anyone surf the web without? I wouldn't ever. You have a DVR, you skip the ads. If you're listening to like Pandora or Spotify or whatever, and I'm in the car and it's like synced up to my Bluetooth and a commercial comes on, I just hit mute and I don't listen to it, right? People are so deluged with ads. They're so fed up with content that is actually not content. It's actually just an advertisement, like camouflaged as content, that people do this, right? They put these in when they're looking at content and marketing. Even if something that's not content and not marketing, they want to tune it out. They don't buy it. They think whatever it is BS. And it affects companies, right? This is actually the most recent stats from like the SBA. Like, businesses don't make it, right? What do you need to be successful in business? You need to be excellent at doing something, and then you need to let people know that you're excellent at doing it. It's not enough to be excellent at one thing. People have to know that you're excellent at doing it. And that's where a lot of people get tripped up, and that's where they're having to try and fight. Like, you have to try and fight with your practice. Like, how can I get through this world of noise to get to people so I'm not this statistic? Right? And it's not just small businesses. Fortune 500 is under the same pressure. I wish I could have grabbed it in time for this slide. It was a cover of Forbes from 2006. And it was a picture of a person holding like a flip phone. And it was like Nokia, 1 billion users, unstoppable. Can anyone ever stop them? And it was like, yeah, they got stopped quick. Like, it didn't matter, right? Who cares that they had a great product, great service? And people even felt like, oh, they have a good relationship with Nokia. Like, oh, I really enjoy their phone. Does anyone, think of any product. I don't even have it. Oh, Brian's holding it. Somebody hold up their iPhone, right? That's a relationship with a product, right? They've nailed that. Apple's a genius at this. They've done it better than anyone else. They understand that if they want to connect with people, particularly if they want to connect with young people, they have to build a community. They have to have relationships with people. Because millennials, there's that word, the millennials, are this new generation that aren't interested in all those things I was talking about, brands, brand loyalty. It goes away. And as these companies are disappearing, you hear it so much that millennials are destroying or getting rid of old businesses. And you want to know if something is a trend. I was going to go find a news story to look it up. But if you want to know something is actually a trend, if you go into the search bar and Google's autocomplete fills out that millennials are killing, millennials are lazy, millennials are killing everything, they ruin everything, right? Like, I didn't even have to actually get the news story. Google is so intelligent, it's like, yeah, everyone knows that they're destroying everything and people hate them, right? Like, that's a real trend. You don't need a news story. Let's be real, like, Google's like the overlord mind of Skynet of the planet at this point. If they say this is the way it is, that's the way it is. So it becomes really difficult to, like, figure out how to get to these people, right? They want this customer experience. They want a custom, personalized experience. They want a relationship with people. And, don't get me wrong, look, I'm a practicing lawyer. There are clients that I absolutely want to have zero relationship with, right? I want to do work, and I want them to give me money, and then I never want to interact with them again. Like, that's real talk. Like, I ain't lying. Don't act like that's not the case. I know everyone in here is like that. Don't act like, I love all my clients. It's all amazing. I know you're full of shit. I'm a lawyer, right? Like, that's not the case. There are clients that suck. We all know clients that suck. And the longer you're a lawyer, the quicker you are to recognize them and go, aha, no, get out, right? That's one of the most valuable things you can learn as a young lawyer, because particularly if you go solo small firm and it's like you're on yourself and you're like, I've got to, we do threshold law. What does that mean? Anything that crosses the threshold, we do it, And so when you're in that role, you start to say yes because you're starving and you're like, someone's like, I'll give you $100 to, like, juggle, and you're like, I can do that, and you do it. But as you become better, you recognize people who are just, let's be straight up, they're just pains in the ass, and you recognize that you just need to say no to those people. But sometimes you have them anyway, and you try to avoid the relationship with them, but eventually you do need to figure out what this means, particularly if you're trying to reach newer, younger clients. And that doesn't just necessarily mean individual, like, consumer-facing clients, even small businesses. Like, I have a lot of software developers and designers who have small businesses as clients, and they tend to be, like, in their mid-20s, or early 30s at the latest. And, when I meet with them, oftentimes they don't even want to meet at the office. They, like, want to go meet in a coffee shop somewhere, which I'm like, look, we can't talk about confidential stuff in a coffee shop. That's not how this works. And we can't obviously go to Starbucks because Starbucks is lame. We have to go to, like, an artisanal, handcrafted coffee shop where they roast their own beans and, like, monks have chanted over it and shit. I don't know. But you have to figure that out. And I can't show up like this, right? I show up in, like, jeans and a t-shirt, because if I showed up like this, they're like, who died? I have to meet them where they are if I actually want to have a relationship with them, right? And if I want to know that we're going to have an ongoing relationship, if I want to know that they, like, will hit me up on Twitter and be like, Keith, you haven't sent me an invoice yet. Can you do that? And I'm like, cool, but don't ask me this on Twitter again, because that's a real thing that's happened to me. It was really odd. I had to tell them, don't ask me about legal stuff on Twitter. You can't do that. That's not how this works. But the thing is, when people want relationships, they want things that are tailored to them. They want it anytime. They want it to be significant. They want it to be delightful, right? They want it to happen anywhere, anytime, right? We're no longer at, it's 9 to 5. People expect to be able to receive services and products where they are. That was a whole lot of Jack's talk, right? He was like, we see the future. Everything can be going through the phone. We're just going to do this. And it's like, Consumers don't want to go through some weird, complicated process to actually engage in legal services. They want a relationship-centric relationship, even with their legal services and lawyers that come about, right? You can't be someone who's just a random face in the crowd. Right? None of these people have relationships, right? This isn't in a community. Here are some people who are somehow in a community of some sort. And the thing that's the challenge for lawyers is to begin to expand and understand like what a community is. Like what communities are you a part of? Not just with lawyers, but like how do you get out into your community and what does that mean? And it doesn't have to be like the Kiwanis Club, right? Communities are a lot of different things. Ethnic groups are a big community that has impact. And if you can be in an ethnic community as a lawyer, that's powerful. My wife's Korean, right? And so we end up doing a lot of Korean things. And I've been exposed to a lot of people that I would have never been exposed to if I didn't have that as an in. And that's not like an unfair advantage. Is it an unfair advantage, Miriam? It is. See, I asked Miriam, who's Afghani, and she was like, yes, it's an unfair advantage, and I use it, right? Right, it's fine. If there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because you're looking for connectivity, right? You don't have relationships with strangers. You have relationships in communities that you're a part of. And it can be around anything. You know, it doesn't have to be anything specific, but you have to find something that can connect people, that you can connect with people. And when you're in there, you begin to, and you have those relationships, that's where a lot of those business relationships begin to form, or the potential is there, right? So like, you know, all right, these are kind of community, these people hanging out, but like, you know, this is a community. Like, real talk. There are people who go around the country and form little groups like the 501st Stormtrooper Legion, and they all buy this armor, and they all get together, and they go to conventions, and there are like dozens of them hanging out. And so here's the thing, if we picked like if it was like me, and I picked 3 or 4 other people in here, random lawyers, and we went and we're like, hey, let's try and, we want y'all to pick a lawyer from the lawyers here. And they'd be like, I don't know how that works. And I was like, hey, check this. Pick me, right? Because I have stormtroopers on my socks. It's an unfair advantage. The unfair advantage is I have some piece of connectivity that allows them to breach the gap of the unknown between us, right? And that's honestly the gap that a lot of lawyers have to face because clients are scared. Clients don't know what's going on. You have to convince a client, they come in, my 16-year-old daughter was drinking and driving, and she T-boned somebody, and she's been arrested. What do I do? And now you, in the chair of the lawyer, you need to convince this person that A, you can protect and secure their daughter, and B, they should give you $25,000 for it. Right? That is a huge trust gap that you have to clear. And if there is no thread of connectivity, if there is nothing to prime the pump of that relationship, it can be really difficult. And as silly as it is that I have Stormtrooper socks on, which my 8-year-old gave to me, and they are awesome, and I love them. And I wear them when I do this stuff, so I can tell them, I'm like, look, Daddy's wearing the things you bought me. But it's enough. They would see that and be like, Keith's at least a dork enough to wear Stormtrooper stuff. He's not going to make fun of us for being dorky, right? Because obviously you dress up like Stormtroopers and you're adults, you're dorks, you know? And you've got to find that community, whatever it happens to be. Maybe it can be baseball. I mean, people end up being coaches on their kids' soccer team, right? I have a good lawyer friend of mine, Brian Tannenbaum, who wrote for David for a long time, and he is a sommelier, right? He's a certified sommelier in addition to being a lawyer. So he goes to wine events all the time, loves wine, likes drinking wine, hangs out with people, talks about it. Does he ever bring up that he's a lawyer? No. I mean, occasionally people are like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. Oh, that's cool. Da-da-da. And they go on and enjoy wine. A month down the line, 3 months down the line, people who get to know him, who have that thread of connectivity with him, and they need a lawyer, who do you think they ask? Even if they don't need the type of area of practice that Brian does, they know Brian, They have a connection with Brian. They have a relationship with Brian. They're in a community together. Suddenly, that is enough connectivity to be able to bridge that trust gap. And so, whatever it might be, you've got to find it. And lawyers need that as well. And historically, lawyers have had that through bar associations, right? There's obviously the ABA, which probably nobody in here probably bothers to be a member of anymore. Well, maybe like a third of you. But everyone's probably, if you have a dual bar, maybe you belong to the local, maybe you've got to belong to your state bar if it's a integrated bar. And I feel like a lot of people, particularly the solo small firms, they end up joining their local bars because that's where value is, because that's actually a community you can be a part of. But as people spend more time online and on the internet and social media, they've got to find communities in other ways. And obviously, as I was talking about Facebook and Twitter earlier, people, it's the social part of social media. People build relationships there. I mean, for real, I mean, I can see like a dozen people in here that I got to know via the internet that I would not have a relationship with them but for connecting over social media. And, in a lot of ways it's enough. Like, I think a big trend in the past year that's really hit hard is, I think, appellate Twitter. Is everyone familiar with, like, hashtag appellate Twitter? Do people know what that is? A lot of people don't know what that is. Anyway, who here has a Twitter account? Raise your hand. You're all lawyers. You don't know what appellate Twitter is. I'll explain it to you. So it's just a hashtag that apparently, I'm trying to remember how you started. It's not important. But a lot of appellate lawyers started being like, hey, we want to talk to each other. And so they started using the hashtag appellate Twitter, and they all tag it. And now I think there was like an article written about them in a few different places now at this point, but lots of judges, a lot of justices, lots of appellate practitioners all over the world, they all connect around that hashtag, and they talk to each other, and they mentor each other, and they help each other. And that happens a lot in public on social media. But the problem with being a lawyer is obviously that there's a lot maybe you want to talk about with other lawyers that you really don't want to say in public. Like that bit earlier where I said clients suck, we can't say that if we're not in here and we're all together on the same page. Like if I went out here and someone said, didn't you say that clients suck? I would be like, no. I said clients were awesome. I love them, they're the best. They pay the bills. But as a lark, earlier, so I've been writing online for close to a decade now, but only recently in the past year, I was like, I've never had I wonder if people would be interested in a private space to talk. Maybe lawyers want together and talk on social media, but they want to do it in a way that's maybe away from like prying eyes. And multiple people have tried that over the time. Like, don't get me wrong. And I know I've written articles calling the idea stupid in the past. Like, I'm cognizant of the fact. I've had that talk with Bob and Brogy before. Like, people will be like, we're the first social network for lawyers. And it's like, no, I can like list a dozen that have been tried and they all fail. Mostly because they try and charge money for it, which is like probably not what you want to do. And then they were like trying to treat them as like business entities and like be real serious. And again, I did this as shits and giggles. And but it ended up working. It's funny how that works. And so anyway, LawyerSlack, that I'm here particularly to discuss as a community. Here's another Star Wars reference for people who are dorks. Everyone knows what Mos Eisley Cantina, Han Solo, Greedo, right? Han shot first, not the prequel garbage that they edited the movies that like Greedo shot first. Come on, people have seen Star Wars, right? So it's Cheers said at the Mos Eisley Cantina as scripted by John Grisham. So it's a bar where everyone knows your name, except everyone's a nerd, and it's written by a lawyer, which is actually a pretty accurate description for the place. And it's fun. I asked a few people what they got out of it and what they said, because I didn't trust myself to describe it, so I wanted to ask a few people about what it is. And the eyebrows is way too long of an in-joke to even begin to describe. But it's a place where people have really come together. It's a community, right? It's people who have real relationships with each other, right? I mean, again, I see a number of people I know in here right now who are in there that are lawyers, that are members, who a lot of them I've met for the first time here. There are people who refer business to each other in there. There are people who mentor each other there, people who have made connections, and there are amazing lawyers in there, actually. One of my favorite moments was earlier this year. Everybody remember Simon Tam and the Slants, the IP case from earlier this year about the trademark, about whether or not if people are not familiar, the Slants were an Asian American rock band, and they wanted to trademark their band's name, the Slants. And the Copyright Office was like, that's racist, you can't do that. And they were like, First Amendment, A-heads, like, we're doing it. And so they went. And their lawyer through the whole thing was a gentleman by the name of Ron Coleman, and he did it all pro bono. And Ron's in there, and Ron went to the Supreme Court. He didn't do the oral arguments, but he was there because they were his clients from the very beginning. And people knew that it was going on that day, and it was happening. And at like midday, Ron pops in the First Amendment channel and is like, well, that was an interesting experience. And everyone was like, holy shit, like, how was it? And so he starts describing his experience at the Supreme Court of the United States over this like giant case, like right away. And it was like this amazing experience to like have a relationship and be able to speak to a lawyer about like that experience. Not that he didn't, it was just like, this is awesome, right? It was a real thing that people, keyed into. There are lawyers in there. There are in-house lawyers from Twitter, Amazon, HP, Qualcomm, the head of legal for Discord. Who's here? Who's a gamer? Who knows what Discord is? Right? So the guy who's the head of legal for Discord is in there. He's a really cool guy. It's a place where people have these relationships with each other, and it's a real place. It's where lawyers share and engage in ideas. It's a place that they can be away from prying eyes and know that they can build relationships with people. They have a community with each other to commiserate, to learn, to say clients suck in private and not get in trouble for it. And there's all types of stuff. There are, I think, 80 channels at this point, maybe closer to 100, of all types of issues, whatever you want, anything from, Fed Civ nerds, which guess what? The people who are FRCP nerds are total nerds. Like you're a lawyer and you're into the federal rules of procedure and you figured out what the Slack thing is and you found it, you were the dorkiest lawyer ever. I love those guys. First Amendment, that's Game of Thrones, of course. Insurance defense, IP, in-house, legal tech, newbie, parents, law biz. I can't even explain what lawyer cabal is. It's too complicated. But people have all these interests that they band around and like are with each other, and it's amazing. And then we've got over 500 lawyers now, and in the past year we've exchanged. This was as of Friday, 736,000 messages. You can see in the past 30 days there's been 70,000 messages exchanged. It's going up. It continues to go up. Not particularly because I'm doing anything. I'm very tangential to the whole enterprise at this point. It's just very self-sustaining. When Jack was talking about the keynote, the flywheel thing, that's in play here. Like, I look down at my phone and I'm like, and it's like 500 notifications, and I'm like, wipe? I don't see any of that. Like, I don't know what's going on. The other day, I was getting ready for this talk. I was like, I was trying to look, and I looked down. And people were talking about New Orleans because people knew I was coming here, and a few of us are all being here. And someone was like, I'm going to be in New Orleans in a couple weeks. And, was trying to figure out what they were going to do, and I made a couple of recommendations, and a couple other people made recommendations. And this person was like, awesome. She's like, I'll follow any recommendations from my LawyerSlack family, was her word. And I was a little taken aback. I'm like, whoa, I ain't close with you like that. But I guess people are, and it's been surprising to me. Like, and I'm not even, maybe people have seen, if they're on Twitter, have seen the hashtag, I'm not even going into the furry thing. If you thought I was going to talk about furries here, it's not going to happen. But because Ask me afterwards, and then I'll tell you about it, but right now, too complicated. But people have just been able to connect and like build amazing stuff from it too. That's the other thing what's really cool about it is people have built their own communities within it, right? People have developed their own followings, built their own blogs, built their own communities as an offshoot, and that have nothing to do with me and everything to do with what they're into. And it's just an incredible experience. This is from the furry lawyer that I'm about to put up here. This was his, I asked him, I was like, what's LawyerSlack? And he's like, it ain't a water cooler, stop calling it that. This is what he described LawyerSlack as, which actually I think is pretty accurate. It's a pretty salty crowd, right? It's lawyers with their ties loosened, complaining about what's going on, complaining about politics, complaining about giant animal people, the normal stuff. And they support and mentor each other, and it's a blast, and it's really fun. But it makes you think, who's your community as a lawyer and with your practice, right? Who are you reaching out to that you can be a part of and build relationships with? Who is it that when you get in with them? And I'm not talking just about lawyers. Like, obviously, you have a bar association that you have relationships with. And when we get to the end of this, obviously, I'll invite everyone to come. If you would like to join LawyerSlack, more power to you. I will let you in, and you can join our community. But outside of, like, maybe the referral aspect, which, don't get me wrong, is really powerful, you need to have relationships directly within a community because that will lead to work. Right? People like to do business with who they're friends with. I think a great example is your brother, Sean, with the guy, if you go to thesurflawyer.com, right? Like, what? Really? You're going to be a niche surf lawyer? Like, that's dumb. Like, woo! But Sean has done a great job with this. He's a lawyer in there that I'm friends with. And, he's an avid surfer. He is a great surfer. As his brother has told me, and I take his word for it because I live in Alabama and there is no ocean. But he's a great surfer, surfs all the time, and guess what? There are a lot of surf companies, and there are a lot of photographers, and there are a lot of community events that go around it, and there are actually a lot of IP issues that come up around surfing with photography and design and support structure for surfing that he's been able to tap into, right? And it's been an amazing thing for him. And there's communities out there that you can try and be a part of. Like I said, it can be an ethnic group. It can be whatever you want. It can be around coffee. I am a huge coffee snob, like real talk. Like, it's killing me to have to drink Starbucks. Like, I wake up in the morning, I know I was joking about like the artisanal, like hipster coffee place. I totally buy my coffee at one of those places. I buy beans, grind them. I have a burr grinder. I only use a French press, and like I'll geek out on like coffee origins with people nonstop. I love it, right? And I knew it would happen. There's a guy in here. He's gonna come up and he's like, "Dude, coffee. Let's talk about it." And like he is gonna be excited, and we are going to totally dork out on coffee, and it will be incredible, right? And it struck me the other day, and there's even confluences of that. About 2 months ago, I was over on the Panhandle, just like right that way, and there's a local coffee place there, and Game of Thrones was still on, and this was out front. Who the hell cares about this? This has nothing to do, like, in terms of like a branding corporate message, like what does this mean, right? But what it is it's like my socks. This is a coded message from the people who are working in this local independent coffee shop. They're telling the world, we're cool, right? Totally. Who's going to die this week, right? Like, we're in the pool. Like, I totally hate, when is Sansa going to die? Like, I'm tired of Sansa. Like, no one really likes her. She's super whiny. Like, get rid of her. Like, I can't stand her as a character. Like, I'm sorry? I know. I remember saying that like in Slack, and people were like, I don't really like saying. And people who like Sansa are like, what are you talking about? Sansa's the best character. I love her. And it's like, whoa, okay, chill out. But like this coffee shop, while it might seem dumb, people are walking inside this coffee shop because this gives that thread of connectivity. It's silly. It's dumb. Why? It's exclusive. They're not saying, we want everybody. They're not saying, coffee, we got some. Here's the deal. They're saying, coffee is coming. It's here, right? That's a direct mainline message to people who watch Game of Thrones, period. That's it. But if you're that person, if you're in that tribe, you're like, yes, I'm going, and there's a Starbucks right next to it, and then some other thing, and then this, you're going there, right? That's where you're going, because it matters. They want that thread of connectivity. They want that relationship to have, because it makes the extra bit of difference. And, those relationships and having a community are so important, and there's so many things that can get in the way of it, because communities and relationships can be, really rough, they're not pretty all the time. And here, I told you I'm going to tell this story. So this is a story kind of about relationships, but it's also about customer service, and particularly in the light of being a lawyer, it's a very specific example. So where I live, my local community grocery store that's literally 3 blocks away from my house is a Whole Foods. And it's one of the really big Whole Foods. It's not like a tiny little Whole Foods that's kind of with whatever custom, whatever. It's a big, full-on, big grocery store Whole Foods. And one with a cafe in it. So not just a little prepared hot bar, there's a full-tilt restaurant you can go in there and eat at. And we'd eaten there, my wife and my son and I, we'd eaten there a few times, and the service sucked. It was not good. Normally, we just blaze through there, and it was so bad that we had stopped eating there. And now then finally one time, my wife is like, I don't want a hot bar. I don't want to have to cook. She's like, can we just sit down and eat here? Let's give it a try. And it wasn't busy. It probably seats 20 people. It's a big circle. Probably seats 20 people, and there were 3 people sitting down. And there were 2 servers, or 2 workers in. And it's all high top. It's probably 15 high top chairs, and then 5 just sit down. And so at this point in time, my son's probably 5 or 6 years old, and we're not going to put him in the kind of the high top. So we're like, we'll just sit here. So we sit down. A couple minutes go by, and they're not busy, and kind of looking around, and it's like, all right. A couple more minutes go by, and it's like Tommy and Andrew right here are me, and they're doing stuff, and then they're doing something, and they're like, that action starts happening, right? And it's like, what? Did that really just happen? They're actively not trying to pay attention to us. Maybe we'll get tired of it. That we get to about 5 or 6 minutes, and to where I'm just my wife, I'm like, well, we're going. She's like, I'm going to go wait in the car. I'll see you in a little bit. And I'm like, good call. So I go up to the manager at Whole Foods. There's the little help, customer service. And I walk up, and there's a girl there, and she's like, hey, Whole Foods, can I help you, whatever? And I'm like, yes, I went to complain. And she's like, oh, but the organic and the artisanal. And I'm like, get me a manager. Manager comes up. I'm like, look, this is what happened. We sat down. Y'all weren't busy. There were 3 other customers. I was there. My wife was there, her son. We sat there for 5 minutes. We were actively ignored. That is not how you run a business. Look, I have friends who own restaurants. If that happened, if they had someone come in and sit down at a table in their restaurant and no one even acknowledged them for 5 minutes, I was like, do you know what would happen? And he's like, what? I was like, they would be fucking fired. And he's like, this is Whole Foods. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. This is horrible, and you need to know the service is god-awful. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Here's my card. He wrote it on the back. He's like, please give us another try. We'll have a meal on us. Do it. And I'm like, look, you really think I'm going to come and eat here again? And he's like, I understand, but please give us another try. Maybe we'll make it right. I leave, I take the card, and I'm raging pissed. I go to bed that night, I lay down, and I'm like, ugh. Then we just don't even shop at Whole Foods for like 2 months. We just drive to a further grocery store. Eventually, we start going to Whole Foods again, but I'm not eating there. About 9 months go by, and my wife is like, same scenario. Can we just eat here? You've got that card. Like, it'll be free. We can just eat. And I'm like, fine, let's go. So we go. And we sit down, and they at least acknowledge us, and it's a little bit busier, but there's 3 people behind the bar area now. And we're talking, but as it happens, they're dropping the ball again, right? There's 2 servers, and there's 1 girl who is the cook. And I'm starting to get mad, but the girl who is the cook, who it is not her job to wait on us, is like bringing the A game. Like, she was on the ball. She gave a damn about her job. She saw that we were not being treated right. She's like cooking, stops it, comes over, oh, hey, drink, whatever. I'm like, oh, I might have a beer or whatever. Do you want to try? Like, gives me samples. She's like going over and above, like beyond the level of care that she needs to do, particularly the fact that it's not her job. She's going so far and above and beyond to actually make there be a good customer service experience that it changed the entire scenario, right? Because I was already primed to be pissed at them because the last one was so bad. But this time, because she gave a damn and was going the extra effort, we had a good experience. And the food was good. I had a hamburger and french fries. It was all good. We get done, bust out the card. And I'm like, oh, they're like, it's X. And we had some groceries with us that we were going to check out afterwards. And calls the manager. They're like, let me check on this. Comes back, manager, all good. He's like, and actually, groceries too. Don't sweat it. It's a free meal, and like, we probably had like 2 things like this in our bag, and so that was like $80 because we were at Whole Foods. And that was free, so that was amazing. And we left. And I was like, and as we're going out, I was like, I'm nothing if not but fair. I go to the help desk. I'm like, hey, did they call over? And the same actually happened to be the same manager. I'm like, oh, hey. He's like, oh, how was it? And I was like, actually, it was great. And I was like, actually, it was about to be bad, except for the cook. He's like, except for this one person. He's like, oh, who was it? I was like, I didn't catch her name, but she had pink hair and shit in her face. And he was like, oh, Christina. And I was like, like if you've got shit in your face like this, don't be wrong, more power to you. I'm not judging, but that's also how I'm going to describe you. And he knew who she was, so I was like, she was amazing. Can I please give her like a employee review or whatever? He was like, yes, that would be so helpful for her. I do it, cool. Go home, go to sleep that night, feel pretty good. And I'm like, that was, that kind of changed it for me. About 2 hours later, I go, I'm like, wait. And I rush to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh my God. And I violently explode top and bottom. It is awful. I lose it. I get the worst food poisoning I have ever had in my life. It is uncontrollable. I have to get in the shower and turn the shower on because I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what the hell is happening? And it was the worst possible experience I could ever have. But I preferred it to the first one because I wasn't pissed about the customer service experience, right? It was a better, even though I'm in the bathroom all night long, vomiting and having you-know-what, and then was laid out for 2 days, sick. I'm not supposed to say this because my wife's a nurse, but she went to the hospital and brought back IV bags and hung for me. I was dehydrated as hell. But it was the better customer service experience, right? And I remember it more fondly than the first one. And I always love that because I think it's very analogous to being a lawyer. Because your clients are going to have shitty outcomes. You're not going to win every case, right? you can't always give them what they want. Sometimes they're going to get food poisoning. But you can at least make the experience of food poisoning really fun and good. And that's actually part of being a lawyer, is that can you deliver that service experience? Can you have that relationship and make that connection with people? Can you create something that there's a thread of connectivity that you can start to maybe build a relationship and build a community out of it? Like right now, all of you can come up to be like, hey, Keith, remember that time you shit yourself? That was awesome. I heard that story. And so now we all have this relationship. Now it's over a really embarrassing thing for me, but I'm just going to have to live with it. And I probably shouldn't have shared that as a story, but it happens, right? Shit happens. So you've got to do something to make sure, because if you're in a relationship and in a community, what doesn't ever happen is no one in this scenario, not in this scenario because it's too loud, but if you're going to be in a relationship and if you're in a community, no one ever puts these in, right? These are the earplugs from earlier that I was talking about. Watch out. When you're in a community and you're in a relationship with people, you don't tune them out, right? When you're here at the Clio conference, you're not here to ignore people, right? Maybe you are. That's kind of a weird reason to come to a conference. I don't know. I don't want to speak for you. Step out of turn. But you're here to make connections. You're here to be a part of a community. You're here to have relationships with people, right? And there's no ad blocker for this, right? You can't TiVo over this. You can't mute this. I mean, I suppose you can, but you're negatively affecting the value you receive from it. That doesn't make sense. So if you think about it that way, and if you're not parts of communities, if you're not part of a team, right? The Lego Batman, does no one have kids? What's going on here? Right? This is a team. This is my family. This is my wife and my son, right? To my son, this is our team. I'm Batman, my wife's Batgirl, and my son's Robin, right? He's like, Daddy, this is our team. This is our family. And I'm like, yes, cool, right? If you don't have, in this situation, I'm never putting earplugs in, right? I'm never blocking this. And if you start to think where are the communities? And if you're not parts of communities, then what's happening? You've got to figure that out. I mean, and I can, just random example, just because I can see her. Julie. Julie is all about, she's got a pink shirt on, she's got a pink purse, and she's and you've got your gun necklace on, and she does a lot of gun trust work, right? And she goes shooting, she hangs out with people. She is in a community, people know who she is, right? Everyone knows who's in and where she lives. She's in a real place, she's identifiable. Everybody knows who is in the shooting community where she lives, knows who she is. She's the lawyer, she's the one who does all that work. Guess where people go? Right? And if you don't have those things in your practice, you've got to have, you need to change your practice. You need to change how you put yourself out there. You need to change how you get out. And again, I'm very happy for you to join our community. If you go here, you can join. I'll approve you. You have to prove to me that you're a lawyer. That's the only qualm. You got to actually be a lawyer. Thank you.